Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I'm really excited to share today's guest's story with you all. And before we jump in, I'd really appreciate if you could take a moment and rate the podcast on Spotify or on Apple. And this is going to allow the podcast to reach more people. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
All right, folks, super excited to share today's guest and topic. So I'm joined with Ryan, and Ryan was on the very first podcast episode back in 2021. And we're going to actually go through a series of frequently asked questions or struggles that we see coming up with clients in Alpha Posse or in the AP, or I see in my own clients as well. So today I wanted to really just ask Ryan's opinion and like best practices for generally people in the kind of first 1 to 2 months of a program. They're maybe not seeing progress quick enough, and what's the kind of best approach to have more patience and then understand the process of long-term compliance with a workout. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Ryan.
Absolutely. Fabulous question. And this could be literally for anyone out there and for those of us who have been training for a long time, but just need a little reminder. And what I would say is from the very beginning is look at your goals in terms of what you want out of it. And so we talk about this a lot, like what's your why? Why are you here? Okay. This is the macro of everything. And understanding that, first off, things take time, and we need to understand that, yes, you might want to get the muscle up next week. You might want to get the whatever movement next week. Okay. I get that. Okay. But look at it in terms of not just getting it, but owning it. And what I mean by that is by taking the time and putting in the work necessary in order to own that movement, which means that you got it. It's solid. That means it's not really going to go away. And so to give some quick examples, just throwing some big skills out at you, one arm handstand. Now, I took a lot of time, the necessary time to get that really, really focused on my strength, the mobility, the control needed for that. So that now if I were to go back and say, oh, I want to start working on that again, it wouldn't be that far out of my reach. I would be able to get it pretty quickly. Okay. It goes like that with any skills. And so coming back to what I mentioned, that's the macro, understanding that things not only take time, but you should give them time so that you are getting so strong, improving your mobility, flexibility, improving your control along the way that you own that movement and it's yours forever. That doesn't mean that you'll be able to maybe crank it out once you get it. Doesn't mean like every single day you'll have it, but I mean like as you continue with it, it's going to be there. It's going to be accessible for you. And this is really what we're after, looking at longevity in terms of owning a particular movement. Now we need to look at the micro of that. And so the micro goals are really what's the most important thing here. So we know where we want to go. We know we want, Connor, throw something out at me. Give me an example of something that somebody might want, a skill, as I take a drink of my coffee.
Yeah, so let's just say something really simple, like they want to get a chin up, or they want
Perfect.
let's just say chin up.
Chin up. Fabulous. Okay. Now, first off, excuse me, is that you assess where you're at. This is where we always start. We need to know where we're at. And so if we know where we're at, then we can start setting up these micro goals. And the micro goals simply means that, okay, we're going to realistically focus on where we're at right now and spend the necessary time to own that. I keep coming back to owning the movement. And let's kind of look at this for a second. Owning the movement means that it still might be challenging for you in the terms of like, well, let's just say this way. You can do the movement safely and do multiple reps of it. And so remember, when we perform a repetition, by the way, we want to make it beautiful. That means we go slow. That means that we have a very high quality of movement. That means that we're not holding our breath for, because we're not under load here. Okay. And that we're able to do it and know that we can do it. So that's what I'm saying, that when we own a movement. So working at that level, and the micro goal being to make that movement as easy as possible. That's when you own the movement. And so by starting there, getting in volume and saying, you know what, I'm going to stay right here. And I'm just not only going to get, good at doing the movement, I'm going to get really good to the point where the next variation of that particular movement you decide to do is totally possible. And so
can you give like an example, Ryan, of like someone that can't do a chin up yet?
Right.
What would be kind of one of those steps, maybe initial movements you get them to work on?
If you can't do a chin up at all, and let's say that like you try and pull from the bottom and you're like, oh, I can't do it. And then you jump up, or let's say not even jump up. You place a chair or something underneath the bar that you're using, and you put your chin up over the bar and you hold yourself there. Now, if you can do that, cool. That's where we're going to start. When we do this, it's simply just trying to hold yourself up there, making sure that you're keeping your shoulders pulled back and down. You're not jutting your chin out in front. You have this nice posture. Lower body is tight. You're able to hold this without feeling that you're unsafe. In other words, like, oh my God, this doesn't feel good. If you're at that point, then, okay, we need to back off even more from there. And let's start off with hanging. Let's start off just hanging from the bar. Let's work on improving your grip. This is a great place to start. We just start hanging. We start working on the pulling prep, but we're working on that scapular strength and the mobility of your scaps, and simply keeping your arms straight and working on raising yourself up and down with straight arms. So you're not even doing a chin up at all. But the thing is you're working at a level where you know that you can safely do this and you can get in volume and still know that, okay, I'm working towards being able to someday do the chin up. This is a micro goal, and you focus on doing what you can as well as you can, and you just keep doing it. And some people say, well, you know what? How do you stay motivated? Well, you just do it. I mean, that sounds, a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's like, you just do it. Don't just think, oh, I need this motivation to do it. No, get up there and do it. Do it, be done with it, move on to the next thing. And so again, if you're just starting out and you find that just trying to hold yourself above that, your chin above the bar, it's not feeling safe to you. Okay, cool. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at these micro goals, and we're going to look at these micro wins, and we're going to get you to win. And we're going to set you up for success by making sure that you're comfortable doing this so that you can do a lot of volume of it. Now, how much do you do? I don't know. That depends on what you need. But you keep doing it until it's at that point where you're just like, this is so easy for me. And then you go and you reassess and you say, I'm good with this. I'm going to try one more time now. It could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be a month. But that thing is every day you say, all right, I've been hanging here and I'm hanging a little bit longer. Winning. You just won. Okay. That is something you should celebrate. These micro celebrations. Say, good job. Okay. Then you say, next time I do this, I'm going to hang a little bit longer. And then you start to build up this confidence and you're like, okay, I got this. I own this. And you go back and you assess and you put your chin up over that bar after stepping, using a chair or a bench or something to help you. And you're up there and you're like, oh, this feels so much better than when I first started this 3 weeks ago. I can work with this. Cool. And you do the same thing. You say, all right, this is where I'm at. And then you say, good job, because now you understand that you're better than you were before. So you little micro celebration there. Pat yourself on the back and then move on. Okay. Yes.
Just one point as well I'd like you to maybe explain for people as well is you've got all different types, but you've kind of two categories of people. One person thinks they can do more, and then they tend to get hurt, get injured. And then the other person maybe is not pushing it enough, and they're not getting maybe the adaptation. So can you maybe talk about how people can maybe better understand maybe what category they're in, and then understand how to push themselves from there?
Absolutely. So, and this is a great question. So if you have a person, and let's say, for example, that they push themselves actually too much, well, there's little things that we want to focus on. Okay. And first off is when you're doing something, were you able to practice that particular movement similar to the level that you started your practice with? So let's say in this case, it's a chin up. And if your goal is to practice a particular variation of that chin up, and you keep pushing yourself and you get to the point where like you find that the quality of movement is just really going down, just to the point where you're just like, no, you're going too much with that. Okay. Now, the other thing of that is not just that, but for example, you're able to continue to do single repetitions of that. And you find that, well, you spend 20 minutes and end up doing like 40 chin-ups because you did 2 a minute, during that whole time. I mean, great. To me, in that case, it sounds like you're actually ready to move on to the next variation of that. And so in our case, if you're pushing yourself too much, it could be thinking that you're actually doing too much volume rather than saying, okay, if the goal is moving towards a ladder variation, then let's move on. Okay. Let's move forward. Okay. But if we have the other camp where you're like, yeah, this is, I did one, I'm good. I'm not a person to be here and judge and say that you got to do more. But here's my thinking on this. If you can, I think you should. And this is also what can be difficult, going back to the people who do push themselves and saying, oh, I could totally do one more. And they end up doing 10 more. Okay. But it's always looking at the quality of the repetition. It's always got to be that. Are you able to perform this with the same feel of the quality of movement that you did when you performed your best repetition of that? It's not going to be 100%. I understand that because you're already tired. But what I mean is if you're getting to that point where you're like, I'm still so good to go on this, and it just keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, then you need to move on to the next thing. Okay. But if it's at the point where you're like, I did one, I'm good for the day, and you still probably have, I don't know, 10 more in the tank that you could do very, very well, single repetitions, at least do more. And again, it's not my place to push a person to say you have to do more. But my thinking and the way that I do my training personally is, even if something on a piece of paper says today is this, and I feel so good that I'm just like, you know what? I feel like doing a couple more. I will do a couple more, but it doesn't mean I do 1,000 more. And so this is really what's difficult, is because you have to find that balance for yourself. But there is that fine line between doing too much and not doing enough. And I think the big thing is that over time and really slowing things down and bringing better awareness to where you currently are, in terms of owning a particular movement is where you start to understand that. And so this is where, let's say, great example right now is I'm doing actually quite a bit of kettlebell work. And so, and this isn't something that I am really, really good at, but I know my body. And so rather than me looking at a program and someone telling me, oh, we're going to do, I have no idea, like 25 reps of this, if I'm in there and I'm starting to feel like I'm not feeling this right now, I will back off 100%. But there are days like yesterday where I was doing something, I was like, I'm feeling really good. I'll do a couple more repetitions, because to me, that's practice rather than just thinking of it as I'm trying to get jacked. Right. And so
I thought that was all the messaging over the years is you clearly want to get jacked. That's
absolutely.
the kind of vibe.
Yeah. That's all I'm at.
GMB ethos is just getting
jacked. But I do know there are people out there and they do want to get jacked. So if your goal really is to pack on and you really want to get as huge as possible, you got to push yourself and you got to be pushing the limits. That's just basically how it is. And but I know that generally we're not talking to those people right now. So again, bring awareness back to the quality of your repetitions. And the other thing too that I like to do is when I'm practicing, I always leave a few in the tank. And what I mean by that is I am not working to 100% capacity. If anything, this maybe surprise people, I don't know, maybe it misses, but like 80% might actually be a bit too much, but I actually want to end my practice portion on a high note. And I used to do this with my handstands, is where I would do a handstand and I was like, let's say that I did like 20 handstands or something like that. And I was having a good session, and it was like the time period that I was after. I'm like, today I'm going to do 20 minutes of just handstands. And I would do it. And I would like do a handstand that was like really good. I was like, sweet, I'll end here. I'm good. Instead of going, oh, that was so good, I want to try another one. And then like gradually see the form get bad. Because in that case, to me, it's like you're practicing bad form. And so I wanted to end on a good note. And then I move into the play portion or push myself for conditioning. And that's where I would change up and use a different variation, would literally push myself to get stronger. Because if I know if I do that, then when the next session I go in, my practice is going to be better. So, yeah.
Can you can you explain, let's just say they're not maybe doing a full handstand, they're doing kick-ups against the wall and that's their practice.
Right. Yes.
And then what would their push be to really get that? And they finish on a high, like you're saying. So once the form starts breaking, they've moved on. So
absolutely. Yeah. Let's say they're just at the point where they're doing kick-ups right now. Mm-hmm. Dude, finish up with, for example, like doing a long period of time of just doing bear, but focusing on scapular elevation. So when you're doing bear, you're really pushing hard into the floor and pushing away. And like that is fabulous for the handstand. And the reason why is because you're actually working on being inverted. You're inverted. Okay. But the thing is, you're not putting as much pressure on your wrists because the angle of your shoulders or the arms is actually less than having it over the hands. The other thing too is you're able to get in a lot of volume. And so you're really going to be working the scaps, which you need because you've got to get that scapular elevation. And so by backing off, if you will, and getting in a lot of volume, it's really going to carry over and help for when you're actually upside down. And that's just one single example that you could do. But I like that because you're not putting as much strain on your wrists because you're not stacked with the shoulders over the wrists. And again, you can get in a lot of volume. You can focus on form. You can focus on your conditioning, focus on your breathing. And this all carries over for when you're actually working on your kick-ups because it's a familiar position.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like super low risk as well.
And that's it. Exactly. Yeah.
So basically, mate, like you're saying, the big thing for people to think about is like, regardless if you're like very like go, 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 or maybe you're not pushing yourself enough, it's gauging things by the quality of the repetition is always going to be
Absolutely.
the way to progress.
Absolutely. And I think that's for anything. I mean, we could be talking about barbell squats right now because imagine loading up a barbell squat and your form is atrocious. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to crank this out. Well, no, you're going to like, break something, to be perfectly honest. And it might not be that day, but over time it will be. And this is what it comes down to. Remember, we're looking at the macro. We want to get that thing eventually, but if you break yourself along the way, you're never going to get there. It's just like a car. I'm going to drive cross country. Okay, great. If you start off in a car that's super crappy, you're not going to make it out of the state. And so this is exactly what we're talking about, is understand that the journey, you know, the end goal might be across the United States, across Europe, doesn't matter. But the thing is in order to get there, you need to focus on really taking care of what's right in front of you right now. So if you're doing something and you see that your car starts to overheat, no, you don't keep going. You pull to the side and you figure out what's going on and you work on making sure that your car is able to get to where you need to go. And that's your body. And so that's why the quality of the repetition is the most important thing. It's not how far you go. It's how you're going right now to help you to keep going over the long run. And so that's why I think that micro goals are so important. How am I doing this right now, today? How am I doing this? And then tomorrow, when you go into it, you might need to make some adjustments to make sure that you can keep going. But as long as you keep going, you're going to get there. And it's just understand it's a long process. It can be a long process. But if you just show up and you just keep going and you try and make it as beautiful as possible, you're going to get there.
Yeah, I think that's such a really good way of putting it with the macro micro, because then if you're feeling a bit frustrated with things not happening fast enough, you can just, instead of saying, oh, I need to push through and get my workout done today because of X, it's like, no, like long term, this is what I want to achieve. So I can just skip today. Like it's not a big deal over the course of a decade, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, mate. Well, look, I'm conscious of your time. So like, I really appreciate you breaking down that. I think people get a ton of value. Is there anything else you want to share before we jump off?
No, I know it can be very tough. When we first start a program, when we first do anything, we're very excited about it. We want it. And it can be very difficult to say, okay, delayed gratification in terms of the macro. If you look at the micro, though, and make sure that you focus on what you're doing right now and celebrate those little wins add up to big wins. And so, again, show up, do the work, do it as beautifully as you can, and you'll get there. That's it.
Amazing. Appreciate you taking time, mate.
Thank you.